Hey guys, it's Proc, and today I want to talk about guardrails in Europe. Europe is definitely the hardest region to guess for me, and even after learning things like plates and ballers and poles, there's still so many rounds where you don't have any of those. And I think guardrails are often a clue that gets overlooked when it comes to guessing in Europe, and they're nothing crazy. They're not going to double your streak or anything like that. But after you've mastered those more basic clues, guardrails are a really quick and easy thing to learn that just might save your streak. So, the first thing you should learn about guardrails in Europe is that there are two general types, A profile and B profile. They're actually really easy to tell apart once you see them, and most countries will have this A type, which is the normal looking kind of curved guardrail, but some other countries will have this B profile or B type, which is totally flat across the front of it. And then there is also this thin B profile, which I will talk about later. Okay, so once you've taken a look at this map here, link will be in the description, by the way. How do you actually use this information to make a better guess? So let me show you guys a couple of rounds. Here are some rounds that all have no antenna and look pretty similar, and they're all within like 40 kilometers of one another. So when we see no antenna, normally we'll think either North Macedonia or Serbia. And these can be a little bit difficult to tell apart. Sometimes they're a little bit easier if you're in the flat part of Serbia, but as you can see, these are all pretty hilly, and they all look kind of the same. Of course, there are some other clues that I'm not going to point out, but the main one here is the guardrail. So as you can see, we have a flat B profile guardrail here. So that means that this one is Serbia. And if we go back and look at these other ones, we will see that they all have this curved A profile guardrail. And that means that they are all North Macedonia. So if you do find yourself in a country without a antenna and you're pretty sure it's Serbia or North Macedonia, but not quite sure which, go ahead and look for a guardrail. And if you do see one, then you can be pretty much 100% confident in your guess. Here's an interesting location I got the other day in a country streak. I saw that we have these bollards that are like the Austrian or Slovenian or Serbian or Montenegrin bollards, and we do have an antenna. So initially I didn't consider Serbia at all, but there is actually a B profile guardrail, which none of those other countries have. So Serbia can sometimes rarely have an antenna. Personally, I tend to forget that since 99% of rounds you probably won't have an antenna. But luckily, the guardrails can save you from making a mistake like thinking this is maybe Slovenia or maybe even a Montenegro with no rifts. Unfortunately, as you may have seen on the map, Montenegro can have A and B type guardrails, so it's not the most useful thing in the world, though I have found that Montenegro really doesn't have that many guardrails to begin with. But if you are in a 50-50, you have some rifts, say, and you're not sure if it's Montenegro or Albania, if you do have a B profile, then it can only be Montenegro. If you have A profile, though, you're going to have to look to some other clues. Okay, so the last Balkan country that this can come in useful for is Croatia. As you can see in this round, we have some maybe Hungarian-looking bollards and architecture. Looks like a nice road. We do have an antenna, but we have a B profile guardrail, which you will not find in Hungary, but you will find just over the border where this location is in Croatia. So that can be a really useful thing to use because Croatia, at least for me, has been notoriously difficult. Nothing really gives it away. It's kind of like you guess it after doing process of elimination. So being able to use these guardrails, again, that's B profile in Croatia and really none of the surrounding countries, and that's can be a really useful clue to use. Here's another cool location I saw the other day on a Jake Lyons video where he was doing a 100 country streak. He got this round and it actually kind of tripped him up for quite a while. It looks like kind of alpine architecture, but it's a little bit poor. So he was thinking maybe Slovenia, but he couldn't rule out Croatia. But actually, we do have this A profile guardrail, nice and handy for us here. So if that is your 50-50, I know both of those countries, Croatia and Slovenia, can be kind of hard to guess if you don't have any definitive clues. So here's a round where you might get tripped up by it, but just look to the guardrail and you can make your guess. Okay, so moving on from the Balkans, Czechia and Slovakia both have this quote-unquote thin profile, B profile guardrail. I usually think of it as a B profile guardrail with a really tall center portion compared to regular B profile. This is not the most useful thing in the world. as they can't really be used to differentiate Czechia from Slovakia. But if you're not sure if it's like Poland or like France or something and you don't have bollards, and you do have a guardrail, just make sure that it is a little bit taller in the middle, and you can be pretty certain that it is Czechia or Slovakia. Both of those countries can have regular B profile or even A profile, though, kind of rarely. So I wouldn't use this as a 100% thing. Okay, last and probably least, to be honest, we have Poland and Denmark, which both do use B profile guardrails. But to be honest, in those two countries, there's so many other clues that you'll probably get in around, especially if you do have guardrails like bollards or poles or something. So I honestly don't know if I've ever used these. Maybe on one highway round in Denmark, but that's about it. Okay, so on the right here, you can see we have a map of the colors of the reflectors that are actually in the guardrails. This is a little bit less useful, but I have found a couple instances where it has helped me out, so I will show you guys those. First is in the Baltics. As you can see here, they are all different on this map, but I found it kind of rare to find guardrails in the Baltics, and when you do find them, then they're almost always next to bollards or some other clue that you would use first anyway. But just in case, I will show you guys what I found. So Lithuania is the most obvious one because it has orange rectangular reflectors. Here's an example. So they are orange and rectangular on the actual reflector itself, and on the back they are white. So just keep in mind your driving direction. Of course, here, as we can see here, we actually do have bollards all over, and I think that probably will be the case, but maybe you have a weird NNPZ round, I don't know. And next is Latvia, which has similar reflectors, but they actually make kind of a trapezoid shape, which fills in the area of the guardrail a little bit better. So instead of just being a rectangle, they fill in the whole area, as you can see there. And here is another example, a little bit different, but same idea, a white reflector, which fills in that trapezoid shape. And I think they can also have red reflectors. As you can see on the map, Estonia has no reflectors. That's something that is somewhat useful, but I've also found stretches of guardrail that don't have any reflectors either in Lithuania and Latvia, so I wouldn't guess 100% on that one for Estonia. One other thing that I was actually kind of surprised to find so useful is guessing between Spain and Portugal. So as you can see on the map, Spain has yellow reflectors and Portugal has no reflectors. The yellow reflectors is definitely a pretty early clue people learn, probably the first reflector clue that anyone learns, and you see them everywhere in Spain. If you have a guardrail, you're almost certain to have a yellow reflector in them. But you can kind of use the inverse of that on a round where you're not sure if it's Portugal or Spain. You can look at the guardrails, and if you see there are no reflectors, then you can be fairly certain that you're actually in Portugal. Here's another round that I thought looked really a lot like Spain. Of course, there are other clues like a license plate and the no hunting sign. But if you don't know those, you can just take a look at the guardrail and see that there are no reflectors and send Portugal. Okay, one last thing to mention, rusty guardrails. I have found these mostly in like Eastern and Southeastern Europe, kind of Balkan area, like Serbia or Bulgaria, which is where this one is, or Romania. Not 100%, and you'll probably get it on the landscape anyway, but could be useful. And one more thing, which I'm not sure if it's a fake meta or not, but it's worked for me every time so far, is if you ever see a guardrail with black and yellow sections, then guess Romania. All right, so that's all I have for you guys today. Once again, guardrails, we have A profile and B profile, mostly useful down in the Balkans, and make sure to pay attention a little bit to the color of the reflectors. I will leave a link to this spreadsheet in the description. It also has a list of all the countries and example locations of their guardrails and reflectors. But yeah, if you guys have any extra guardrail clues, I've been looking out for them, so please leave them in the comments if I didn't mention in the video. And otherwise, I will see you guys next time.